Hi, welcome to Eye Openers. I'm your host, Brittany Drozd, and each week I bring you insightful conversations with entrepreneurs that will help you make more money, become a strong leader, and build a business culture that you're proud of. Grab your coffee and let's dive in.
I'm Erica Rooney, your host, and today I have with us Brittany Drozd. Now, Brittany is somebody that I met through my network, and y'all know how much I talk about the power of networking. So prime example right here with my girl, Brittany. But I am excited to have her on today because when I met her and talked to her for the first time, it was just like chatting with one of my really good friends. We've got a ton in common. She's genuine, she's passionate, and she is a badass businesswoman. So I think you guys are going to love what she has to say. And Brittany is actually a business coach. She's got her own shindig going on. She's going to tell us all about it, but she empowers entrepreneurs and technical experts to become confident leaders, build better teams, and catalyze culture change. She is also a podcast host, so you will have to follow and check out her podcast, Eye Openers, which shares stories to overcome the challenges in running small businesses and capitalizing on your best opportunities, and is hired by businesses to improve performance, develop leaders, and improve company culture. Now, Brittany is obsessed with mastering human motivation. We're going to hear more about that and perfecting business management. She's also a mom to 2 little girls and an avid kite surfer. Now, hi, Brittany. How are you?
Hi, thank you. That was a mouthful, but you did awesome.
It was a lot, but the first question I have is like, what the hell is kite surfing?
That is something I get a lot, which happens to be like a good conversation starter.
There you go.
So the story is I met my husband on a beach in Hawaii, and he had this like kind of crazy apparatus with him. I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, hey, will you launch me? Which is, I'm pretty sure now was just his pickup line.
I was gonna say.
Well, ladies, it worked. So I was launching this huge, massive kite. I'm like, what am I doing? I see these strings attached to you. Like, what's about to happen here? Are you going to launch off into outer space? But it's kind of like windsurfing, except in 2000, they came up with this idea of instead of the sail that you hold on to, we just have like a kite that's up in the air, but it's tied to you, kind of using a harness that you also use in windsurfing. So you've got this kite strapped to you and you've got a board on your feet and you're kind of like walking on the water, like Jesus.
That's wild. But I was like, wow, you're starting this podcast off strong with this idyllic, like met him on the beaches in Hawaii.
Guys, it's a true story.
I love it. Well, awesome.
It's a fun thing that we enjoy together. And that's something I talk about a lot with clients is beyond your business. What are you doing? What are you creating? How are you living? And for us, it's a shared sport that we can do. It's a fun way to connect outside of going to dinner. And yeah, there's nothing like riding a wave together.
Yeah, it's good dating. I love it. Well, Brittany, tell me a little bit more about you, about your business, what you do, who you serve, and how you show up in the community. I would love to hear all about it.
Sure. So is this a good time to kind of dive into what brought me there? Because it's like, how did she start this job that she made?
Absolutely.
So I was trained as a psychotherapist, and I had a really, really rough experience as a manager in the Department of Mental Health for the state of Massachusetts. And it really brought me to, I just knew I wanted to work one-on-one with people. I knew like that was what motivated me to do my best work. I was so excited to learn about people. There's no 2 people who are the same or have the same story. So I loved the concept of doing that kind of intimate work. But when I was in my practice, I was really noticing that I was excited by some people being on my calendar and I was drained by others. Hint, this is like something your therapist will never tell you, but guess what? They're human too. And we all have preferences. And some people I was really aligned with, and I was so excited by what they were working towards. And I was motivated by their motivation. So when I saw somebody really taking action on the things we spoke about and just saw their commitment to improving themselves in whatever way, that made me show up 110% with all my best work and the best tools I had because they were invested. And so I invested more in them. And I'm sure no matter what your working situation is, you probably see this in your own corporation, company, teams, we see this, right? The people who pay attention, who ask for more, they get more. And so that's when I was noticing that, I started to think about, well, hey, this is a client profile. This is somebody, this is going to be my customer avatar, my ideal client. Right. And so I started listing out these attributes. And what I noticed, and it shouldn't have been that much of a surprise, was I loved entrepreneurs. They were so dynamic. When we talked about solving for something in their professional life, it also helped in their personal life, such as communication, such as telling people what you really want and need from them. And so we were seeing benefits in both areas of their life with one section. And I loved the idea of that impact, that here's somebody who has a mission to create something bigger in the world. They probably already have market proof that this is needed because people are buying from them. So by helping this individual, not only was I helping that person, but I was also helping them solve for this bigger problem in the world, which was their product or service. And I was helping their family, who often gets the short end of the stick with the new entrepreneur, right? They're like 12-hour days, if not more. They're so focused on getting this product to market or improving it. And I didn't like that idea that the family got the short end of the stick, because I come from a lineage of entrepreneurs, and that was my dad and that was my grandpa. And I was impressed that my dad worked a lot, but he was there at my soccer games, and that like meant everything to me. And I thought, wow, if having a dad that showed up like that for me helped make me who I am today and gave me the confidence to pursue this and really show up in like a man's business world. And I don't think about that. That has never stopped me. That's never slowed me down. What could this do for other families, for other kids? Like, how can I help these people become the kind of entrepreneur that has big impact, but also has time to be with the people that they love and be the parent that they want to be the parent, the partner, the community member that they want to be in the world.
Oh my gosh, I love that, because you're right. It is, especially not only with entrepreneurs, but anyone who is really trying to get ahead. Often they pour so much of themselves into their work and what they do instead of pouring into their family and working on simultaneously making that big impact on their family by showing up every single day.
Yeah.
I think that's such an awesome statement. And I think what you do is cool too. So
what I do is cool.
Yeah. Just how you help people show up, not just at work and be better parents, be better colleagues and leaders and entrepreneurs, but also be better parents at home, right? And really striking that balance. So Brittany, when we talked, I guess about a week ago, we talked about my concept of glass ceilings and sticky floors, and you had some great stories to share. And I would love for you to share your sticky floor moments and kind of talk to everybody here about what that was.
Yeah. So I briefly just spoke about the first sticky floor, which was a really tough situation I was in before I started out on my own. And I think it's relevant because I bet other people have their big idea and maybe have been caught by the sticky floor with the naysayers around them or other people who are like killing their confidence in their current workplace. And that was certainly what was going on for me. So I knew I wanted to start my own practice. At the time, I was running a mental health center for the state of Massachusetts, and I was responsible for like 500 clients. And I had a team of like 10 people under me, some clinicians and some caseworkers. And these are the people who are doing the frontline work, following up with people who are really high risk in the community, making sure they have what they need. And these people care. They're hard workers. And they are doing the work that keeps these people out of ERs, keeps them out of homeless shelters. They just need that extra help. Super important work, but had a boss who was so threatened by myself and the other kind of young, ambitious women who were coming up through the organization. She didn't have the clinical training that we did. She didn't need to. She was the regional manager, but I was the clinical regional manager, and sometimes we saw things differently. Sometimes I thought a certain level of care was needed and she didn't, and we just saw things differently. And instead of being collaborative or curious or pulling me in and engaging me to try to figure out how to work through these things, she became divisive and really tried to like split the team. And so my team now was having more work put in front of it, less resources. And then we had the challenge of this boss who didn't really believe in us and was kind of trying to work against us. Now, this got all the way to head of HR. We had to go down to headquarters, have these big talks, and still like she wanted me gone, and she was going to do anything she could. And so it took her auditing my, like, these 500 files. Of course she was going to find something. I'm human and I'm not looking through the 500 files. That's my team's job. Was there going to be a signature missed? Of course there was going to be, because we're all human. Like, if you've been through any kind of audit process in your job, that it's there, it should be there to help you. That internal quality assurance is there to help you and move forward. But that was not the case. They were trying to get me. And they did, and they found something, and like I had to stand behind my team, and we missed it. And so, well, that was a huge sticky floor. Like, I had a panic attack at work one day, and that's just like that's not like me. I mean, this person really, really got to me, and it was so wild how my history was straight A student, like got the job. My mentor helped me get that job. I mean, was it maybe a little too big for my britches straight out of grad school? Maybe, but I was showing up trying to give 110% to this team. And what I learned from that was I saw the people who stood behind me. I saw the people who like signed the petition that they believed the work that I was trying to push was right. And I just took that with me. And the irony is that over like 10 years later, I now work as a coach and consultant, helping people create cultures and learn leadership skills to make sure this never becomes their organization.
Oh gosh, yes. I know when you're telling that story, like for me as a head of people, like it just makes my skin crawl and it makes me cringe, because it should never be that way for anybody. And what a horrific experience to have to go through, especially as someone who's out there trying to give their all, do their best, and help people who you are truly trying to, like you said, keep them out of the ERs, keep them safe, right? And then this is where you're spending your time fighting the battles, right here.
Yeah, this was the worst battle that I had to fight. Never mind like the people who were mentally ill,
who are truly suffering from what's going on here, right? And that, I think that's an interesting topic, and it's one that we haven't explored on this podcast yet, is about the naysayers and the people who are going to be out there who are going to be trying to divide your teams for whatever personal agenda and whatever reasons, right? I mean, you mentioned that this person was feeling a bit threatened by the upcoming talent. You know, what kind of advice do you have for people who might find themselves in this type of situation? Because it's a tough one.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was just my first naysayer of many.
Yeah.
Like, then I branched out on my own when I was at a real low point in my confidence and skill set after just being fired. Then when I decided to shift my business from just but a psychology practice into a coaching practice and serve more business leaders and change my pricing and how I did it all, I got tons of naysayers there about who do I think I am, or like, you can't do that or whatever. And so naysayers are going to be there. And often I want to tell, like, this is so important. It often means you're on the right track.
Ooh. Yeah.
Because what happens is when you're growing, when you're moving outside the mold, when you're pushing the envelope, it forces other people to look at themselves and maybe what they're not doing. Maybe they want secretly to also do the same. Maybe they're too afraid, or they don't feel like they can, or who knows, whatever their reason is. But when you're doing something awesome, when you're growing, when you're shifting things, when you're disrupting things, they often hold up the mirror and go, why isn't that me? And when that challenges the way they had to see themselves, they get scared and they don't like it. And they want us to go back, because then they don't have to look in the mirror. So naysayers are so much about them and not about you and the work you're doing. And it means nothing about being on the right track for you personally. In my experience, I have found that when I am collecting more naysayers, I am on the right track.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that is very powerful to me. So I love that advice. And I will tell you, one of the sticky floors that I suffer from is, and I think what you said is really going to help me, is I worry about the naysayer. So like, I won't even do something because I'm worried that I'll get a naysayer. So I don't even let the naysayers show up, but you just gave me the power back by shifting my mindset and looking at it that way, that like, go ahead, come on, naysayers, like, where are you? I want you in my life. Show up.
Yeah. 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 And if you notice, like in your narrative right there, which thanks so much for sharing, it really helps people to see how that plays out in our head. It doesn't feel good to be rejected. It doesn't feel good not to be accepted and high-fived for like a big idea. So you stop yourself. You stop yourself because you don't want that. It is disruptive. It will keep you up at night a little bit. But what's the other option, that you're not pursuing the thing that you want?
Well, and what's interesting too is humans gravitate towards what's comfortable. I mean, and that's a piece of psychology I don't need to explain to you, but we all gravitate towards what's comfortable. And I think it can be hard to get to that shift where it's like, is it more uncomfortable for me to not follow my passions? Or is it more uncomfortable for me to not worry about the naysayers and just sit back and...
Yeah, that's right. That's such a good point. Our mind and our bodies do follow the path of least resistance. It's what is easiest. That's why like your brain, and specifically your amygdala, is firing, saying like fight or flight, like don't do that, because then you won't have the social acceptance. And part of our hierarchy of needs is having a group that we live with and exist with, because that's how we get money and food and shelter and all those things. So your brain is doing the right thing, except anxiety is a perceived threat, not a real threat.
Yeah.
And so that's for you to then like move that into your forebrain of, okay, well, let's play this out. What's the worst thing that could happen if I took this one step forward? Okay, 5 people will call me and say I'm an idiot or whatever. You shouldn't do that. You're going to get fired. I mean, I'm just trying to play it out here. Like, what's the worst case scenario happening in your brain? And so if they do that, then what happens? And I can ask it rhetorically right now, or you can really like move through that, or the listeners can really think, okay, well, what's that fear behind the fear? And you can keep going through that process till you get to, oh, I guess the fear is that I will die, because if I'm not accepted in this group, then I won't have a job, which means I won't have money, which means I won't have shelter, which you can literally work it back in your brain and show yourself like, oh, my fear of speaking up about my passion is that they'll kill me. Is that likely to happen?
Right.
Probably not. Right. And so now we've got the worst case scenario played out. Now we know how we'll handle some of those objections and those naysayers. And now you can move forward with a plan. So I'm not asking you to take a bunch of unstratified risk, like play it out, come up with a plan in each direction. And then you'll have more confidence moving forward because, oh, worst case scenario, no problem. I already been there in my head. I got a plan for that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's a question that one of my core values is courage, and to be courageous and to ask myself when I find myself going through that sticky floor is to say like, is this the courageous thing to do? Sometimes the courageous thing to do is the hard thing to do. Sometimes the courageous thing to do is the thing I don't want to do. But it goes back to my core values of being courageous. And that's something that helps me get through those sticky floors. But I always ask myself, like, what's the worst thing, Erica, that's really going to happen here? And 99.99% of the time, it's not that bad.
Totally. That's such a great point. One way that I handle a naysayer specifically is like the more bold of the idea I put out there, the more negative reaction I get. I have a video on YouTube that's been up there for years. I think it has like 15,000 views or something. And it was a bold idea about the way like men are responding to like online dating or something. Mm-hmm. And I have so many challenging, rude, obscene comments on it. And the way I manage it is that, wow, this person cared enough to weigh in. And so I just go on there, or I have my assistant go on there and say, thanks so much for contributing to the conversation. They don't even know what, like, it killed it.
That killed it real quick.
Like, they're expecting me to get all upset or take it down or whatever. But I'm like, the truth is that apathy is the opposite of love. And so they care so much, actually, that they cared enough to write this negative, terrible response. And that means that I hit on something. I might not have it totally nailed down yet, but I'm on to something with this idea. So that's like that engagement, positive or negative. Like I don't really pay too much attention. Do I enjoy opening up those comments? Not totally, but I have a plan. So I have a plan of how to address it. And then I move forward with my day. And I don't take their behavior to mean something about me, because what I did is I just said something that made them hold the mirror up and they didn't like it.
No. And I think that's a really great way to look at it, right? And to be prepared for it too. So if you are someone like me that struggles with this concept of naysayers, that I don't even take action to even look at the naysayers, is to have a plan for what I'm going to say when someone comes up to me and they're like, why would you even think about doing that? But if I can map that out, it gives me the power back. So I love that. I think that's really awesome. And it's a very tactical way to go about pulling yourself up out of that sticky floor. It was really understanding where those naysayers, what does that mean for you? Like you said, it means you're on the right track. It means you're under something big and disruptive, which is awesome. And then what are you going to do when it actually happens, when they show up? So I think it's really great. What else would you have to say about naysayers? You and I, we talked, you had 2 sticky floors, another really awesome one that I also can't wait to dive into. But anything else that we have to share on naysayers, I'm here for, because this is going to help me move forward.
So one thing that I think probably a lot of female leaders and entrepreneurs struggle with is that need to please or be liked or accepted. And you kind of hit on this a second ago, where we might hold ourselves back because we want that acceptance. We want that. We want to be liked. We want that approval stamp. We want that A+ on the top of the paper. So many of us were raised to be good girls. And there's nothing wrong with that. But until there's nothing wrong with that until there is something wrong with that, which is you holding yourself back, not pursuing something that's important to you for fear of being disliked. And there's a part of that is wired for self-preservation, that really insular part of our brain that's hard to change, but just to notice that it's doing that to try to keep you safe. Because if you're accepted by the group, then you will have that food, shelter, job, money thing that we talked about. But there is this really fine line. There's a fine line where something worked really well for us to get us to where we're at, and it's going to take something different to get to that next level. And there's that inflection point that you're up against, right? Like maybe being really friendly or doing everything your boss asked or whatever got you that last promotion. And now here you are. But in order to get to that next level of like being a director, or maybe it's releasing a new service offering or something or writing a post that's totally opposite of what most people think to be true, what it will take to be successful there is introducing like a fearless idea or concept, pursuing something without the need to be liked.
Yeah. I was also, as you were saying that, it pulled me back to what we talked about, being comfortable, right? It's more comfortable to be liked. It's more comfortable to go with what everyone around you is thinking, saying, and doing, right? But rarely does that give you the big, massive success that you're looking for, right? All of these people that we've seen, the Jeff Bezoses of the world, they weren't just doing what everybody else was doing, because what got you here is not going to get you there. And it's a quote I've got written on my board. I love it. I think it's so powerful. So thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Now, tell me a little bit about your next sticky floor, because this is one we have not covered on the podcast that I think is going to be really impactful for everybody listening.
Sure. I'm so excited to share this because this is something that is a personal story for me, and I'm certain will resonate with most of you. Your sticky floor is your money story. And everybody has a money story. This is shaped from our very early memories by our strongest role modelers, like our family of origin. And from a young age, we started paying attention to money, because our parents were talking about, you can't have this, that's too expensive. Or you go to the store, what are they choosing to buy? What aren't they buying? And what this comes down to is really establishing a set of values. Money is really about what you value. So what I mean by that is how you spend money, how you think about money, your own deservingness to spend money on yourself or what you buy. So much of this is about these personal narratives that get created. And one narrative that I had created, I noticed was I was experiencing a plateau in my business several years in. I was just like, why am I not like, I had this really nice growth trajectory the first few years, and then I was kind of stuck. And I'm like, why am I not making more money? This is different than the curve I was previously experiencing. And I had to sit with what were some deeply held beliefs. And what I noticed was I had this deep belief that was shaped from my childhood that I should not earn more money than because he was my dad. Like he was smarter than me. He taught me everything. He worked really hard. And then I had my parents had these traditional gendered roles where my dad was the primary breadwinner and he was out of the house Monday through Friday, whatever. My mom was a school teacher and she was home with us more. And so of course my dad would earn more. And then when I was stuck at the exact same earning spot my dad was at, which was, this is not an accident. When these things show up like this in the universe, there is something going on. And our job is to pause and look inward, pause and figure out, how am I a part of this thing that is happening? Because we don't give ourselves enough credit for how powerful we really are. And we're powerful at moving the needle, and we're powerful at keeping ourselves stuck. It works both ways. And in this instant, I was not aware of how my belief that I shouldn't earn more was literally keeping me stuck at this revenue spot. And so when I dove in, I pulled out these beliefs that, and you're going to see I'm a real product of like the 80s and these stories, that I shouldn't make more than a man. Mm-hmm. And that I was in the helping profession technically. And so I believe that was like a place for women because all my people around me were women. And so I shouldn't earn more. As I switched into the coaching world, which at the time was like a more male dominated place, and it was a more business place versus a helping profession, I ran into my own sticky floors there where I had beliefs about my pricing or what my work was worth that was really holding me back. I got really nervous about changing the offering to like a package versus an hourly, because then I was selling value and not selling time.
Right.
And that really changed the way that I looked at money. And so I created this money story tool that I use with every single client who comes through my door. And some of them are like, no, we're here to like do culture work. And I'm like, no, but behind all of that, like, why are you doing culture work? Because you believe that that's holding you back in your business in some way. Well, if part of the goal is a revenue growth goal, is if it's a productivity or like engagement goal, there's something going on. And I want to know what your deepest held beliefs are. And so I have people dive in and explore, like, what's your earliest memory about money? What were the narratives, the stories, or just the statements you heard over and over again in your household growing up about money? Where do you believe you're good with money? How do you believe you're not good with money? And how do those things show up? And then what are the actual behaviors that you execute or exercise with money? And I asked if people have any goals around money, which almost every single person does.
Yeah.
So I think there, right? And so then we really dive in and explore. I had a client on the call yesterday. We were talking about why she's not making some of the changes that we've discussed at length for her business that will benefit her. And she was able to pull out that she had parents who had like money under the mattress, and it was like this scarcity mode.
Oh, yeah.
And she's reached this really beautiful level of success, and she felt she had enough money under the mattress. And that was it. Even though she had these bigger goals.
Yeah. Hard stop.
Yeah. Like, well, I've kind of achieved, I've got enough money under the mattress, which is funny because it's so inconsistent with when she's in her business brain and what she's telling me she wants to achieve. But when we aren't watching ourselves, or when we just fall back into habit, that easy path in our brain, we go to these old narratives, these old stories and belief systems and really values that are ultimately driving our behavior when we're not paying attention.
No, I love that. And I think this is so timely because I was actually just reading a chapter in one of my books yesterday, and they talked a lot about women and women not charging what they should be in their business, kind of like how you talked about moving from an hourly rate to a package rate. And they equated that to feeling guilty, right? Like it's easy for us. Like this comes natural to me. Like I'm a giver. I shouldn't charge for this. And that resonated with me so much because for me, I'm like, well, that's easy. All you got to do is this. There you go. And it's like, no. Like you need to charge for what you're worth. But yeah, it really kind of all brings it back to like, you should be a good girl. You should be nice. You should give. You should share. Sharing is caring. So I love that you draw that connection for people because I think that is probably something that is just completely overlooked by so many. How they deal with money today goes all the way back. And I think everybody needs to take a hot minute to examine, where do you want it to go in the future? Do you want it to be like that? Because if you do, cool, hang out there. But like if you're trying to drive for growth and change and expansion, then you really need to take a minute and examine where you came from and what are those long-held beliefs that are holding you back.
Totally. Yeah. And I'm also exhausted by the other side of that narrative, which is like everyone's chasing money to become a billionaire. Like everyone's so focused on like more. I am not about more for more sake, but what I am about is helping people understand the things that you are doing that are within your power, like whether it's conscious or unconscious. I'm trying to increase awareness, right? In order to change behavior, but that you can make it different. So why they come to me is they're experiencing a level of dissonance. Like I see how this is possible, but I'm having this happen. Like,
yep.
How do we reconcile this? Like there's a friction that exists that's uncomfortable for people. And so in order to alleviate that, in order to create more congruence for them, either from their vision down to what's happening in their business or from what they know they're capable of versus how they're currently performing, I'm trying to explore, shine a light on, create some insight, which is why I call the show Eye Openers. Like, how do we highlight for you where this discrepancy is happening and how do we solve for it? Because without that friction, with greater alignment, then all the efforts are moving in the same direction. You don't have a headwind, you got a tailwind, and all of a sudden what you're capable of just skyrockets. And that's when we see people who are like, I don't know, I just changed one micro thing and look at these amazing results. Like that's what's really happening for them. Now, it does look like a small shift. What actually happens though is it's a massive mindset shift. It's a value shift. It's understanding the story you've been telling yourself forever that's not working anymore. And it looks from the outside rather small, but that creates a massive impact or a result for them.
Absolutely. And I'm all about that mindset shift. And when you talk about just this constant narrative of wanting more, when you have more, you can do more. You can serve more people. You can serve your community more. So yes, it's benefiting you. But when you, as a powerful person, a powerful woman, you're making more money, you can do more with that to serve more. And I think a lot of that goes back to your true passion, right? Helping people, wanting to provide whatever service, whatever knowledge, whatever expertise, you are serving someone in a capacity, right? And if you make more, you can do it more.
Yep.
So people need to remember that flip switch.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Phrase I use, because we do, like you said, you brought up, sometimes women have this guilt thing around money. Like, I shouldn't charge so much. I should share. They should keep more, like whatever. Like I didn't work that hard. Money is energy. Mm-hmm. And like you said, when you have more of it, you have more to give. Like when I am in a place of total abundance, I donate more to the charities that I love. I give more to my kids' school. I think about my neighborhood and what can I do to give back. There are so many ways, because I do believe as women, we are more conscious and tapped into things like that. And so think about how powerful it would be when we are able to create more earn more, have more of that energy to, and what it shows, what the research shows is that actually give more. So this is the way to actually give more, not by charging somebody 20% less, by charging them 20% more and having a process for which you give back.
Yep. I love it. Don't charge them 20% less, charge them 20% more.
The truth is with pricing is it should be a little bit uncomfortable for you.
Yeah.
If the price you're saying out loud is not uncomfortable, then you're charging too little.
I like it. That's solid. That's solid advice right there. So if you didn't hear anything else in this podcast, that's the piece you should take with you. Oh my gosh. Well, Brittany, so when you're looking back at the Brittany that had these naysayers coming at her, trying to tear you down left and right, to launching into your own business and really having to understand your money story, what advice would you give that Brittany that you think would help her get to where she is today, do all the things, have big energy?
What a great question. The thing that comes to mind is like, I don't know, I would high five her and say, you go girl, keep going, and like turn it up to like lightning speed, because the direction you're headed is just limitless. The more that I grow and expand, the more possibilities and opportunities I see. Each time I take a step, I see 5 more places I could go. Each time I lean into an edge, I see how boundless it really is. And that is something I want everybody to experience, because it feels so empowering. It really does. It feels so empowering to experience like putting lots of effort and energy into something and then getting a yes. Like, wow, I've really found this nice spot where I have this skill set. I've created this offering that speaks to my ideal client. And that's the magic. Like, that's where magic happens. And people think, oh my gosh, like this just feels so, this is amazing. But it was actually really intentionally built baby step by baby step. So I would also say, like, never be afraid of that small micro work that feels like you're just like spinning your wheels. It does create traction over time. So 1% better, just focusing on what's the one small step that I could take today that moves my business forward, or my mission, or my passion, or whatever the thing is you want to do. I love exercise analogies because it's a place that people can really relate to. Like, just put your running shoes on that day. Just put them on and see what happens. Like, you can use that exact same analogy for whatever your professional or personal development goals are. And it will get comfortable. Soon you'll be very comfortable with the running shoes on, and then you might go outside.
No, I love that. Now, I also think that after people listen to this podcast, they are going to want to run, not walk, to you and find you and be like, I need you as my business coach now. So Brittany, where can people find you? Because they are going to want to reach out.
Happy to chat with people. I love talking to anybody on a mission. You can find me at my website, which is brittnydrose.com. I won't spell it out.
I'll put it in the show notes.
And then from there, you can find my email and my contact info. But I'm also really active on LinkedIn, Instagram. I have the Eye Openers podcast, which you can find on any main podcast host, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google. I think there's a few other ones there, but that is a really great place too, because I highlight your everyday business heroes, not the ones in the famous books, but the ones that you don't hear about or know their name. And they're like 3 steps ahead of you. But it's so nice to hear about where they've come from, what they've been through, the storms they've weathered, and how they did it. They're literally sharing their like best business secrets and advice. I mean, I interviewed somebody the other day who his revenue is $23 million a year. Like, we can all learn something from that guy, and he's so generous to share it. And when you break it down, it's not rocket science, and that's what I love about it. That there will be one small insight you will take away, I guarantee you, from each episode. So that's a great place to start.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to head there, and I'm going to plug that into my AirPods as soon as I get on my walking treadmill that we were talking about before I hit record. But right. Brittany, thank you so much for your time. You dropped so many gems, and it has just been a pleasure talking with you today. So thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on Eye Openers. Make sure to visit brittanyDrose.com/podcast for this week's show notes. And if you found value in today's episode, I would so appreciate you giving us a rating on Apple Podcasts or share it with a friend. Also, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. This all helps to support the show.